It looks like we are going live there. That's that's our replay, just so you guys know what that's all about. That's our replay. Okay, and then it looks like we are going. There we go. All right. Thank you all for being here. It's good to see everyone. And we are looking at chapter 4 in the Perfume of Silence. It has an interesting title. I remember the mother of all problems. Right, Jenny? That's a funny title, right?
It's great, yes.
Yeah. And thank you for sending in your. There was a few comments and some questions from a couple of people. Thank you for sending those in, and we will look at those as we move along. And we're looking at pages in the book. We're looking at pages 49 to 55 today. And Jenny, where would you like to start on this chapter or the questions? You want to start with the first page?
Yes, let's start with the first page and the first question. So that was, if I put my foot on the floor, there's a sensation of resistance. Does this create the sense of separation? And Francis explains that separation is just a concept which is superimposed by mind onto experience. We don't actually experience any separation between the foot and the floor. It's really just a concept. It's a single sensation. And if we understand that, if we really feel that, then that leads to the understanding that there's nothing outside of myself. So he says, however, our interpretation creates the apparent outside. The outside is always a concept. The experience is always inside. Therefore, the level of experience, there's no outside. And in fact, what that means is that there's no inside either, because if you have an inside, then that implies that there must be an outside. So all of that is just the creation of the mind.
Right, right. Well, this is one of these things that the habitual conditioning, the habitual human experience has, at first it tries to wrap its mind around that idea, and it seems to be, it seems to be take time, or to be some sort of a gradual understanding that allows you to have the experience. And you mentioned in the very first, after the very first sentence, you mentioned that requires, or that takes, you have to have the feeling of it. What do you mean?
Absolutely, it's experiential. It's not something that is in the mind. It's felt. So in some ways, it's easier if you close your eyes and then you feel the sensation of your foot on the floor, because then you're not being distracted by all the sorts of things that you see. And of course, as soon as we see things, then we divide them into separate objects. But at least if you've closed your eyes, then that's out of the way. And you just feel that sensation, and it's one sensation. So it's not really thinking about it. It's a direct experience. And that's what's really important, is our direct experience.
Right, right. So would you talk us through that? Talk us and walk us through that?
Okay,
Just
okay, yes,
let's just
let's just try.
let's walk
Yes.
through that just as a direct experience.
Yeah, so if we close our eyes and just allow experience to be exactly as it is, and then allow the experience of your feet on the floor just to come very lightly to your attention. You don't need to focus on it, just be aware of it very, very, very lightly. And then see, is there really any dividing line in that sensation? It's only a sensation because your eyes are closed. You can't see your feet on the floor. So it's just a sensation. So is there any real dividing line? If you imagine the top of the sensation and the bottom of the sensation, and if you allow your attention to travel from the top to the bottom, does anything change in that journey? And I think we find that it doesn't. It is just one sensation. That's all it is. And now if you open your eyes and you actually look, if you can see your feet on the floor, then all you're really seeing is a pattern of different shades of color. And again, any idea of separation is just created by the mind. There's no really sharp dividing line. It's just a continuous pattern of color from your feet to the floor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is an interesting idea because it, like, in my experience with eyes closed, there are three or four sensations seemingly happening or relatively occurring all at the same time. And it seems to me that the experience is to remain as awareness and aware of whatever the sensation is, establishes my true nature, my identity. And the relative experience of the body mind is just occurring. Is that another way you would describe that?
Yes, yeah, yes, exactly. Yes, it's just one. It's one experience, and that's all.
Yeah. Yeah, Francis is the first one that brings this so close, this subtle nuance, this subtle relationship, and actually the releasing of the um, of the attachment to the body mind by doing that investigation. And he did it first in one of the books that Rupert uh, wrote. Rupert mentions it, and then he does it again here. He does it with a touching the carpet or something, I think.
Yes, yes,
Yeah,
that's right.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Anything else on this page that we want to pay
No, no,
attention to?
I think that's fine. That really covers
Okay.
it.
And then on page 50, the next page, there's a question that says, and if anyone has any questions, we're going to take, Judy had emailed some questions to Jenny, and she sent them to me, and then Richard Rick West had a comment about something. We'll look at that in just a second, and thank you both for sending those in. And the question at the top of page 50, I'm not sure where it is in Kindle, it says, when there is no sense of separation, there is still a sense of I am as a perception. Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think it's Francis really covers it, and it's also another one of those very subtle understandings.
Yes, and I've put a link to a video which I think people might find helpful to watch afterwards, because this is such a difficult, subtle point that people often get stuck on it. They feel, I am located in the body. I know I'm inside the body. It just feels like that. And so the video is called my sense of me is not me. And but this is something that's really key to that full understanding that I am not the body. And the I thought and the I feeling are not myself. They appear in myself, and they're witnessed by myself, but they're not myself. So Francis says, whatever is being experienced is not you. It is enough to simply see whatever is being experienced clearly and impartially. By seeing in this way, we are already taking our stand in our true nature.
Yeah, this is again. I think his clear pointing continues to be to remain as the witness. Just remain as the witness for all of these, even the I, and that's a difficult one to uh, the subtleness because of the I. I used to think that the I was like, okay, the am is gone, I am, so the I must be the essential I, and in a way, it is.
Yes, we have to go back from the I thought. The thought of I is not myself. The I, the real I that is myself, is not something that we can actually think about, and that's what makes it a bit tricky.
It's the is of I.
Yes,
It's the
it
isness
is
of
this
I.
right. Yes,
Yes,
yes.
yes.
Mm.
Yeah, and let's see. He said in that very last part of that paragraph that you were referring to, whatever is being experienced is not you. And then the last sentence says, I am not this perception. To fully perceive our body liberates us. Okay, well, let me finish reading. By seeing in this way, we are already taking our stand in our true nature. For example, we don't have to formulate, I am not this perception. To fully perceive our body liberates us from being the body. So it's remaining, just as we were saying, it's remaining as the witness. No words are involved.
Yes, yes, exactly. Mhm.
It's just a total witness without thought. This is why the I thought is the problem, because even it is being seen. Even the witness sees that and judges not. I call that the no judgment zone.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Rick has asked a question: what's the relationship between self-esteem and knowing your true nature? Is there self-esteem that doesn't evolve around the I thought? Seems a sense of a personal self is undeniable and very useful fiction or tool, as long as it doesn't become a surrogate for reality, I or being. I think so. Ultimately, self-esteem, the real self-esteem, is a feeling of self-esteem for the real self, for the universe, in other words, for this magnificent reality. It's not personal. it doesn't revolve around a person. But yes, I mean, people, if we're relating to other people, then we can't relate to them on practical matters sometimes without referring to a body mind and what our body mind is doing and what their body mind is doing. So, and we will use, in those circumstances, we'll use the word I to refer to the body mind. But that doesn't mean that when we're using the word I in that way, that we're actually believing that the body mind is our true self.
Yeah, it's kind. I mean, it is a paradox because we do refer to the body mind, even though it's not the essential nature. It does point to it by uh, by by recognizing by well, even when we use words, we dilute the description of trying to characterize what's happening, right?
Yes, there aren't words ultimately, so it's really just a question of being clear about what we really are, and then we can use any kind of model that we want, as long as we're clear that they're just models. And the model of I as being a body mind is one that's needed in practical circumstances.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty cool when you have this understanding, and you're liberated from the experiences, the old habits, the things. There's a statement in the New Testament that the Apostle Paul wrote. He said, I don't know why I do the things I don't want to do, and I don't do the things I do want to do. He was so perplexed, he didn't realize that he was in a split mind experience.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So I have picked up a paragraph from the bottom half of page 51 from that question that says there is a strong sense of the I thought connected with watching. There is a reflection of the I in the mind. It is connected with the heart center. The more attention it receives, the more the trouble.
Yes.
I really love the question because it must be many of us have that same question as we're realizing the essential self. So this is very common in my mind and in the emails that I get. Francis answered this with a great answer, of course. This connection is a perceived object. Even the heart center is an object. And I'm really happy to hear, someone who like with the clarity and mastery of Francis or Rupert to say this, because a lot of people think that their heart, that they are their heart. Well, you're really not the heart. Everything is being witnessed.
Yes, yes.
All phenomenal experiences are being witnessed. It is not a problem, he said. He says, a perception that comes and goes, a limitation, it is not a problem. The reflection of the I in the mind is a thought, the I thought, just as we were just saying. At the level of feeling, it is a bodily sensation, the I feeling. These are all objects that come and go. They appear and disappear within that which never appears or disappears. Their source. It is for this reason that on the path of self-inquiry, we do not look for feelings, we look for their source. We don't stop with the I thought or I feeling. We let them merge with their source, which is the subject, consciousness. That is the true I.
Yes, and this relates to one of Judy's questions, which is she quotes the same bit. It's for this reason that on the path of self-inquiry, we do not look for feelings. We work for their source. And she said, could we elaborate what source is being referred to here? And the source is really that which is aware of the feelings. We don't need to give it a name. If we did give it a name, then we would call it awareness or consciousness, perhaps, but we don't. We don't need to. It's not an object. It's just that which is aware of the feelings. So it's taking a step back from the feelings. So sometimes Rupert talks about walking your way back to your true nature, and this is an example of that. And she also asks, related to a little bit prior to that, the previous question, where Francis says, however, behind all these faces, there is one single sense of being a person, of separation, the I thought. And she wants to know, is that good or bad? She doesn't really understand what that sentence means. And what he's really saying is, because the question referred to emotions, negative emotions, and also to not being established in your true nature or in understanding. And he says that those are both mistakes. They're mistakes of identity. I suggest you ask who or what is it that wants to get rid of the negative feelings? Who is it that feels they're not established? And so those are all the faces behind which there is one single sense of being a person, of separation. And what he's saying there is that the sense of being a separate entity, a separate person, is what's actually causing the feeling of not being established in the teaching. There is no person to become established. And exactly the same applies to judging emotions as being bad and therefore wanting to get rid of them. All emotions are the manifestation of universal consciousness. They're not either good or bad. They're just what's happening. We shouldn't claim them. We shouldn't take them to ourselves. Well, one of my previous teachers, Dr. Francis Rolls, used to say, we should stop trying to teach the Almighty his business. This is rather lovely.
Yeah, that's funny. Well, what happens is, typically what happens is we 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 bind ourselves to the experience. We bind the witness to the experience, and then forget that we are the witness.
Yes, yes, that's right.
Yeah. So but it also, for me, it really does take a quiet pausing is what I have found to be the quickest reminder, the quickest, and I somehow my hand goes on my heart and it says, okay, Bill, pause here, pause and just rest in awareness. And that's it's sort of it's a new it's a new program.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Well, if you also notice on this paragraph, this may be the place, one of the first places that I've noticed that Francis uses the term the true I.
Yes, yes.
He talks about the true I, and that's where I, just coming into understanding these terms and how they relate to the understanding, and that's why words can be important and questions can be important, so that you can have clarity around how does this work, how does one see it, so that you do default in the direct experience.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. And the true I is the witness that has no commentary, no judgment, it's just the isness.
Yes, yeah.
Do we have let's see, let me see what Rick had a question that he emailed, or a comment rather. He said, and Rick, are you here? I don't see you,
Yes,
Rick.
I think he must be here because
Okay,
he
of
put
course
some
he's here.
comments on.
Look at the chat board. He types about 100 words a minute. The I thought versus thinking. Too often, thought gets a bad rap. I love this statement he made here. In non-dual circles, the thought gets a bad rap. Thought isn't a problem until there is a false sense of authorship, the I thought, which is false identification with thought itself, creating a thinker, a doer, etc. This fall is due to a false identification, not with thought itself. And this is just what we were talking about with the I thought.
Yes, yes, exactly.
Yeah. Thank you, Rick, for sending that comment in. Rick is like, he's like you, Jenny. He's like all over the place. I mean, he sees all the little nuances of clarity. Thank you, Rick, for your involvement with us. I really appreciate it. If we look at the top of page 52, I have a note at the top of the page that says, it's like the sun, it never sees itself. So I think he was talking about the eye can never look back and see itself, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
See what that question was referring. That was coming from the same commentary. He said, this true I is not itself a perception of or a thought. It is too close to be perceived. That's where it's so close that you miss it, or you identify as the experience. It's so close. We can only perceive something that is at an apparent distance. That which is at a zero distance from the perceiving reality can never be perceived. For instance, the eye can never perceive itself. It can perceive its reflection in a mirror or its image on a photograph, but it can never perceive itself because it is at a zero distance from itself. It is the same with consciousness. It can never perceive itself as an object.
Yes.
Next question. You want to look at the next question?
Yes. The next question was, in meditation, as thoughts subside and the feelings that fuel them become apparent, it's clear that the impulse to think sometimes arises in order to avoid the discomfort of this mass of undifferentiated feelings. However, unlike thoughts, these feelings tend to grow rather than subside when welcomed. And I think this is another very important question. because the idea of welcoming feelings is very easily misunderstood, and I certainly misunderstood it when I first came across it. But it's true that as our attention moves away from objects, then a space is created in which normally buried feelings can come to the surface. So that does happen, but welcoming them doesn't mean focusing on them, and it doesn't mean trying to avoid them or get rid of them either. I used to think that it meant that we needed to sit down with them and welcome them, and deliberately allow them to be there. And I would sit for hours sometimes, just with feelings which were negative or uncomfortable. And Francis says, no, that's not what it's about at all. So he really gives 3 steps. So the first step, which is the important one, is welcome the totality of your experience. Don't focus on the feelings, welcome the totality. And that's actually how all his meditations start. Those of you who go to his meditations on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays will know that. And then the second step is to see that the feelings are actually only uncomfortable because we're resisting them. And to see that, we need to look at the feeling in a neutral way. We need to kind of step back from it. And as we've talked about in previous webinars, see it in the way that a scientist might look at a new species of insect. So that step is just about clear seeing, just seeing that it's not, in essence, uncomfortable. It's the resistance that's creating the discomfort. And then finally, seeing that actually the feeling is a combination of a bodily sensation and a thought or a story that revolves around an imaginary separate self. And then when we look at the feeling, we can see it's just a sensation and not really uncomfortable. It's a sensation like the sensation of your feet on the floor that we explored earlier. It's not really very different from that. And then what's important is just to leave that feeling be, and then inquire into the feeling of separation which gave rise to it. And sometimes that might be a sense of lack, or it might be a fear of death. Those are the very deeper levels of the sense of separation. So the way Francis puts it is a feeling is a bodily sensation attached to the concept of being a person, a separate entity. See clearly that this separate entity doesn't exist, that it is not the subject, the feeler of the feeling. It is simply a thought. And seeing this clearly enables the thought, the I thought, to be dropped spontaneously.
Yeah, that's I like the way he describes to downgrade the label, downgrade the feeling to the level of sensation, because we as soon as we label something, we're using a reference that's making it real. And we attach a stronger bond to the experience.
Yes.
So when we downgrade it, and you can downgrade all of those feelings, or most of them, you can downgrade them to sensations, and the power that it had on us seems to relax a little bit, enough to give a space.
Yes, yes. I remember a while ago, I was experiencing feelings of grief about something, and but I was down in Devon, walking along the coastal path, and I walked quite quickly up a very long, very steep hill. I got to the top. There was a feeling in my chest of just sort of tightness, and suddenly I recognized that this feeling of tightness is exactly the same sensation as that feeling of grief. And that's all it was. I mean, I wasn't walking dangerously fast or anything. I was walking at a sensible speed uphill, but it was enough to produce a feeling of tension in my chest.
Mm.
And it was
Yeah.
just the same. And seeing that, that made it much more real for me, I think.
Isn't that interesting? Because I mean, this teaching right here is a similar teaching to what Rupert gives in his retreats. And I was at one of his retreats in Garrison, and phoning home to my wife Lisa. She was in a lot of pain of some kind of symptoms she was having, and that was when, coming out of that retreat, I said, well, could you just, could you come to a place where you could welcome it and just allow it, just welcome it, not just say, okay, well, okay, I welcome it, or okay, I accept it. No, welcome it and love it, like it can stay here for the rest of your life.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
What he says in the next question, I have trouble with the word welcome. Receive seems more appropriate. He clarifies what he means by welcome, and that it's welcoming the totality. You don't separate out that feeling from everything else. You welcome the totality of your experience, and that seems to be a much easier thing to do. Um, Otherwise, you're sort of in danger of conning yourself into thinking, "Oh well, I'm going to go and welcome something now,"
Yeah. Yeah.
and it's not an activity in any way.
Yeah. Rick refers to this. He says, welcome, a universal yes or welcoming, is not an avoidance strategy, nor does it imply passivity. Right action or inaction will always manifest, but it will be impersonal in nature.
Yes.
Yeah,
Mhm.
perfect. And we can get those messed up. I've had them messed up, and I've heard teachers sort of misrepresent those. That welcoming cannot be and it is it's a it's it's an allowing that doesn't do anything.
Yes, yes. There's no effort because really the discomfort is only in resistance. So there can't be any effort because all that's happening is that you're letting go of that resistance. The resistance um, is allowed to dissolve, and then whatever is present is just a sensation,
Right,
and there's no
right.
problem with it.
Yeah. Yeah, and Catherine, I mean, I think you speak for all of us when you say you can't use the mind to figure this out.
Yes, it has to be in your own experience. You have to actually try it out and experiment. And Francis is very keen on experiments. All his meditations are about experiments. So that's what we do. We just experiment.
Right, right.
Mm.
There's if you go to page 54, the second paragraph, top of the page, Francis says, as long as you understand this welcoming is an activity, don't do it. As long as there is a doer, a person doing it, don't do it. However, there are many things we do without doing them as a person. They are, in fact, being done. For instance, when we breathe, we don't breathe, we're being breathed. He doesn't
Yes,
say that, but that's what
yes,
I'm adding. When a thought comes to us, we don't think it. We don't think it. It just comes to us. It is in this way that welcoming takes place.
yes. And Judy has asked a question about the first bit that you read. As long as you understand this welcoming as an activity, don't do it. She says, don't you have to initially notice whatever you were initially trying to avoid and then remind yourself to welcome it? Well, it's not really like that, Judy, because if we look carefully at our experience, we'll see that noticing and reminding are not things we actually do. They happen completely automatically. Just as an example, if you imagine you're going out shopping and you go out of the front door and you walk to your car, and then suddenly you remember that you hadn't locked the door. Now, that reminder, oh, I haven't locked the door, that came automatically. Yeah, it wasn't an activity which made that you did, which made that thought come to you. It happened automatically. And then so you lock the door, and then you go to your to your car, and perhaps you see that one of the tires looks flat. That's a noticing. And that noticing happened automatically too. You didn't think, oh, I must go and notice this tire. The noticing was completely automatic. And it's exactly like that, that having understood from this teaching that we need to welcome all our perceptions rather than resist them, then once you've understood that by reading this book, or coming to these webinars, or going to Francis's Satsangs, we'll be reminded of that many times, then the noticing and the remembering then happen automatically, just like remembering to lock the door.
Yeah, it's where does though we all get these little nudges that are that little voice that I mean it comes in a nanosecond reminding us, did you do this? Did you do that? What about? And we get these subtle little reminders a lot of the time until we are have a new default and we're very high sensitive to aware presence and how it communicates, and that seems to be almost a vibrational frequency. It then we pay attention to it and we go, oh, that yeah, this this true I thought was giving me a hint, an intuitive hinting to help myself. And when I look at that, what I love how Francis says, don't do it, because what I usually say is don't touch it. When you see it as the witness, don't touch it. Don't
Yes.
don't don't touch it.
But it's also about, when he says don't do it, it's also about effortlessness. And Francis is very big on effortlessness. Has a lot of meditations on that, and that that to me is absolutely key to really living this teaching. Everything becomes effortless.
Yes, yes. Linda has a comment on this next that would be related to this next paragraph. Third paragraph on page 54. It says, welcoming is not an activity. It may appear to be so in the beginning, because it seems that a certain effort is required to allow. And this is also what Rick was speaking about. Rather than reject certain unpleasant aspects of our experience, however, as we become more established in welcoming, we realized that welcoming involves the cessation of the activity of resistance rather than the initiation of any further activity. It is the allowing of everything that appears within the field of consciousness just to be as it is. And Linda said, could you speak more about welcome the totality of the situation? I think those are related.
Yes, yes, absolutely, and that's such an important point. So thank you for mentioning that, Linda. Yes, when he says welcoming the totality, it's very much not dividing things into things we like and things we don't like, or things that we think, oh, I've got to welcome this. I don't really like it, but I've got to welcome it. It's not like that. It's there being no division between any of our sensing and perceiving and thinking. There's no division between any of it, and there's no grasping or hanging on to a little bit of it. It's the welcoming is allowing all of it to flow through, because it's all a flow. Nothing is static. Everything is always a flow, and just allowing it to flow as it is, rather than saying, oh, this is an uncomfortable feeling, I've got to go and deal with it, I've got to go and welcome it. It's not like that. You don't even separate it out. You just see everything in the context of its totality.
Yeah, it's for in my mind, it's like it's the no judgment zone. There's no labels. There's no commentary. There's no good or bad, right or wrong, and there's no preferences. And when you can find that place,
Yes, yes.
when you can find that place, and then what I've noticed is this invisible knowing, then it just shows up in the body mind person. It knows what to do, not
Yes,
because it's so smart or I got this, or it's not based on anything except intuitive knowing that moves the body mind experience because of the place that presence, the space of presence is available.
yes, absolutely. It's completely effortless. It's completely automatic. Whatever's needed um, comes into mind if it needs to come into mind, or whatever action is needed is done by the body, and we don't have to fuss over it.
Yes, yes, yes. And I love, Catherine, what you said, where the knowing or understanding is enjoying riding a wave without needing to figure out how or where the wave came from. It is effortless. It's just like, woo, yeah.
Yes, yes. Francis talks about surfing the waves, and
Yes,
you just allow them to take you to the shore of your true nature.
yes, yes. Let's see what else we have. We are looking at the other statement that Francis made in the second to the last paragraph. He said, to begin with, welcoming is usually understood as something that we do. Later on, it is understood to be something that we stop doing. It is understood as the cessation of resistance. I think Rick was referring to this, of exclusivity, focusing onto a fragment of our experience. And finally, welcoming is understood to be what we are, the natural, loving, open space in which all things come into being, abide, and dissolve.
Yes, yes. That's beautiful, isn't it?
Oh man, that's like icing on the cake.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
That's a beautiful statement. I love reading statements like that, right?
yes.
Yeah. Surrender to not knowing.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah. And when we do that, our preferences are not they're moot. Our preferences don't exist. We think, well, what I have preferences. Well, yeah, we do have preferences, but when we find ourselves in that place, preferences are not involved.
yes. And there was, on the subject of not knowing, there was a lovely meditation from Francis last night, in which, as an experiment, he got us to look at and to filter out any thoughts um, which didn't come from complete certainty. So there's a lot of things that what we think we're certain about, but actually we're not certain about. We can't actually be sure of. And he was getting us to filter out all of those. Only thoughts that you can absolutely be 100% certain about should be allowed through.
And did he give some kind of how does one filter out?
You just allow them to disappear.
Okay.
You don't follow them. But if there's a thought that you're absolutely certain about, so for example, the thought there is something rather than nothing, that's okay. And if that arose, you could follow that, because that's something we're all absolutely certain about.
Good.
It's just one reality. If that is something you're certain about, then again you can follow that. But if you're thinking about time and space, you don't know that either of those really exist. So
Yeah.
those are ones to filter out.
Yeah. It's attuning oneself uh, to as we were talking. It's attuning oneself to understanding that actually does become a new default.
Yes, I mean this is not something to carry on doing, or even I think to
Yes.
repeat again.
Yes.
He was simply showing us that there's very little that we do actually know for certain, for absolute certain.
Uh, there's a question on the board from Elizabeth. Can you read that? It looks like her words went together. Something about locking a door.
Why do we need to lock doors? Well, yes, for practical reasons. We need to lock doors because our insurance policy requires it. And I think that's a good enough reason.
Well, I mean, I had this. There is a sense in which we do relative things in the bodysuit uh, that are that maintain order in a relative sense, and I feel that in a even in an illusory world, we're led to do things to operate within the relative sense. and that there's nothing wrong with that.
Absolutely, and in fact, it's not just that there's nothing wrong with it. There's everything right with it.
Yes.
Francis often talks about acting appropriately, acting with intelligence, according to the culture in which you are living. So some things are appropriate in one culture, but not appropriate in another. And so it's part of being sensitive to that. If we're sensitive to the totality, we know what works and what's intelligent.
Yeah. And let's look closer at that. As we establish as we establish ourselves in the truth, in the experience as presence, as the witness also sees if there's a motive, and it doesn't touch it. If there's a motive of fear, if there's a motive of protecting yourself, that motive is also seen by what is not is untouched by any experience.
Yes, that fear is arising, and it might be a perfectly natural fear. It's perfectly natural to be afraid if you're walking down a dark alley at night and you hear footsteps behind you. Fear is absolutely natural and perfectly normal. Nothing wrong with it at all, and you can act appropriately, maybe to run.
Yes.
Or whatever is sensible.
Yeah.
So yes, it's acting intelligently in the world is very much a integral part of this teaching.
Yeah. And it's also using the elements, the relative experiences that occur in the bodysuit, using all of those experiences establishes oneself as the witness of the experience when you don't touch it.
Yes, yes. And remembering also that the witness is not actually separate from the experience. That's the later the later stage, the tantric path, where we see that there is actually no separate witness. That everything is just one. Everything is just happening. Everything is just experiencing. That's all there is. The unity of the perceiver and the perceived, but the distinction between perceiver and perceived is another artificial one, and it's really the last one that ultimately disappears.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Catherine said, you can't stop the mind. However, in time, it is not a problem. And then Doug said, yes, we just do what we can and don't worry that it's not perfect. Yeah, please just notice if you're worrying. Just notice if there's an issue and, and don't touch it. Just enough to allow it to be perfect. It just exactly as it is. And then in that space, the body mind will know what to do next.
Yes, it's always perfect anyway, and thought is always okay anyway. Whatever is happening is okay. It's the product of the universe, of consciousness, of reality. There's to imagine that there could be anything wrong with it is just arrogance, really.
Yeah.
It's saying we know better than God.
Right. Yeah. Are those birds at your place? Am I hearing birds from you?
Yes, yes.
What
I
is
think that
that?
was a chaffinch.
It was a what?
A chaffinch.
Is that a bird?
Yeah, yes, it is. It's got a sort of red breast and little white wing bars.
Oh, it's beautiful. Beautiful sound. It's saying hello to everyone.
I think it is, yes.
Well, we've come to the end of our time together. It's so good to be with all of you. Thank you for joining with us. And we'll finish chapter 4 next week, starting with page 56. We'll end on 55. And for all of you, just know that the Awareness Conference is being open today for registration. It's free, and go to billfree.com sometime tomorrow. I'll put a link up there, and it's April 16th, 17th, and 18th. We'll have a fun weekend. It's 3 days of 30 speakers, including Rupert and Francis and Ellen Emmet, Gangaji, many non-dual and A Course in Miracles teachers, and Karen Drucker is some of you know Karen. She's a beautiful musician, singer, and Nada Bowen will be there. So look for that email, and then we'll see you all next week. We'll see you Tuesday. Thank you for being
Yes,
here.
can I just say one thing,
Of
Bill? Just
course.
a reminder for everyone in Europe, not for anyone else, just in Europe. There'll be an effective time change next week, because in the US they go to summertime a bit earlier than we do in Europe. So for the next 2 weeks, effectively, well, in the UK it will be 4 o'clock, I think 5 o'clock, in most of Europe, Holland, France, and so on.
Okay, because we spring forward next week.
You do just a couple of weeks earlier. We don't till the last weekend in March, in Europe, so we're different from you.
Okay, thanks for that reminder. Yeah, we do it on the 14th. And
Yeah.
thank you all for being here. Lovely having you. And thanks for the great questions. If you have any questions, any comments about the next 6, 7 pages, just email Bill or Jenny, billfreeonline@gmail.com. Or Jenny is, what is it, Jenny?
Jenny at quarryfarm.com.
Yeah.
QUARRY farm.com.
Good. Okay, thank you all. See you next week. Have an awesome